Ever think about like all the unseen forces that might be holding you back from like becoming a millionaire? That's what we're kind of looking at today. You know, this book, The Spooky Millionaire by John Gold. And it's really fascinating. It's a look at how our thoughts and, and beliefs and even like the energy around us can kind of, influence our finances.
Yeah, it really does challenge like traditional ideas of wealth creation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gold dives into what he calls parasociology, so essentially the paranormal side of how society works,
Mm-hmm.
and makes some pretty compelling arguments about why so many people have trouble attracting wealth.
Yeah, right away he introduces this term, the spooky millionaire, which I have to admit really grabbed my attention. What does he even mean by that?
Well, um, he's not talking about like ghosts or anything like that. It's more he's talking about this hidden world of like energy and beliefs that surround money. And
Yeah.
he's arguing that like most people have, these subconscious blocks and these like limiting beliefs that prevents them from tapping into this energy and like manifesting wealth.
Okay, so let's break that down a little. And he talks about the, mindset block, right? The idea that so many people are actually afraid of money subconsciously. How does that even happen?
Well, just think about it. How many times have you heard someone say like money is the root of all evil? Or you see those stories about lottery winners, who wind up miserable or broke. So these messages, whether we realize it or not, create a deep-seated fear of wealth.
So we start to think of money as a bad thing, even if like we consciously want it.
Yeah, exactly. And like this fear, it can show up in different ways.
Yeah.
Gold talks about people being afraid of social isolation if they get wealthy, worrying about changing as a person or like attracting unwanted attention,
Yeah.
like from fraudsters or even the tax authorities. He even mentions the fear of losing health care.
That reminds me of something Gold said in the book. He shared a story about moving to a wealthy neighborhood, and he found like this pool supply shop full of rich people complaining about the costs.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, is it? But it just shows, how we see wealth doesn't always match up with reality. And these fears, even if they seem irrational, can be really, really powerful.
So fear might be one block, but then Gold also says we're like socially conditioned to resist wealth. What does that mean?
Well, he taps into our like basic human instincts. We're basically pack animals,
I get
right?
it.
And we've evolved to fit in with the group. And like standing out, especially financially, can trigger these like primal fears of being ostracized or rejected.
Okay, I get that. So how does that play out in our modern society? Like, give me some like real world examples of this conditioning.
Okay, well, think about the jobs we often like really respect, teachers or nurses,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're essential, but they're not exactly rolling in dough. Could that like subconsciously make us connect wealth with being selfish or not caring?
That's really interesting. It makes you think about the messages we send, even if we don't mean to.
Right.
Yeah.
And Gold goes even further back in history, like way back. He talks about medieval cathedrals having these special prayer alcoves just for rich people so they could atone for their sins.
Wow. So this idea of wealth as something that could be like bad has been around for like centuries.
It really has. And it's interesting to consider how that might still be affecting us today, even if we're not fully aware of it.
Yeah, it really does make you think about how those ideas from so long ago might still be affecting us, even if we don't even realize it.
Totally. And, it's not just about like those huge historical things.
Yeah.
Gold points out that even like the way we talk about money, it kind of keeps those negative associations going.
How so?
Well, just think about like some common sayings, right? Like money talks or, money can't buy happiness.
Yeah.
Or like these subtle hints that wealth is kind of corrupting or, not really what matters.
So we have these deep fears, and society telling us to resist getting wealthy sounds kind of hopeless.
Well, that's where Gold gets really interesting. He says that the first step is like becoming aware of those subconscious programs that are running in the background, and once we like shine a light on them, then we can start to like challenge them and see them in a new way.
Okay, so being aware is important, but like what about actually changing those beliefs and like attracting wealth? How do we do that?
Well, Gold suggests that to become like a spooky millionaire, we got to kind of like embrace a new way of thinking and acting. He talks about decisive action, what he calls, no looking back.
So he's saying we need to be bold, almost like radical in our approach?
Exactly. He uses this analogy of Hernan Cortez when he landed in Mexico to conquer the Aztecs. He like burned his ships, so there was no going back.
Wow, that's pretty dramatic. So are you saying we should all be like burning our metaphorical ships to get rich?
Not literally, of course, but like the idea is the same.
Yeah.
Gold says that most people don't reach their goals, financial or whatever, because they don't fully commit. They always have a way out, a way to back down when things get tough.
So it's about getting rid of those mental escape routes and going all in.
Yeah, and he really emphasizes resilience.
Yeah.
Like being single-minded. He gives an example of a runner pushing through a stitch to finish a race. It's that mental toughness, refusing to give up, even when it's hard.
That makes me think of like those early settlers who came to America, facing huge challenges to start a new life. They must have had that same determination.
Absolutely. And Gold actually highlights the Jamestown settlement,
Yeah.
that first permanent English colony in North America. Those colonists faced like unbelievable odds, disease, starvation, fighting with Native Americans, but they stuck with it because they had this vision, of a better future.
So we need that same level of commitment, that willingness to be uncomfortable and face the unknown if we want to achieve something big.
Right on. But it's not just about like mental strength. Gold also talks about physical preparation, which might sound kind of weird.
Okay, now I'm curious, what does he mean, like physical preparation for wealth?
He starts with something super practical, actually decluttering. And he doesn't just mean like getting rid of stuff, but mental clutter too. He says a messy space reflects a messy mind, and that can block like good energy and abundance.
So it's about making space literally and mentally to open up to new things. I like that.
Yeah, and he's serious about it. Gold says to spend like weeks, even months decluttering. He says that as you let go of the old stuff, you'll start to feel lighter, more energized, more open to receiving.
That makes sense. It's like you're clearing out the cobwebs to make room for the new stuff.
Right, and to like make it more concrete, Gold suggests making a financial folder.
Mm.
Keep all your important papers and notes in one place so you have a clear picture of where you're at financially.
That's a great tip. Everyone can do that.
For sure. But Gold doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
He brings up this really interesting idea of micro actions.
Micro actions. Tell me more about that.
He says to push your comfort zones with little things you do every day, not directly about money, but like expanding your experiences, opening yourself up to new possibilities. He thinks these micro actions can change your energy and make you more likely to attract wealth.
So, like, what are some examples of these micro actions?
He suggests things like trying new restaurants, going to a town nearby that you've never been to, even just like looking at travel brochures for places you've always wanted to go. He says to go to a ballet or even just visit a fancy store, even if you don't buy anything.
So it's about getting out of your routine and trying new things, like stretching your imagination and what you think is possible.
Yeah, and he makes this pretty wild comparison. He compares these micro actions to Neil Armstrong walking on the moon or Jesus leaving a small town to spread his message. He's talking about choices that are big and bold.
So by pushing ourselves a little bit, we're getting ready for those big leaps.
Exactly. It's like building up that mental muscle for taking risks and getting out of our comfort zone, which is really what attracting wealth is all about.
Okay, so we've got like the foundation, we're mentally prepared, we got rid of the clutter, and we're even like trying those micro actions. So what does Gold say about actually attracting wealth? This is like where it gets spooky, right?
Yeah, this is where he really digs into like the energy of money,
Sure.
how what we believe can shape like our financial reality. But before we get into all that, there's one more piece he talks about, going back to those subconscious programs.
Oh, right. The ones from like how we were raised and what society tells us, how we might think of wealth as a bad thing without realizing it. It's like we're working against ourselves.
Exactly. And he gives this example that's kind of powerful. The people we often admire most, like teachers, nurses, people who help others, they're usually not the ones with tons of money.
Yeah, it's like our values and wanting to be wealthy are like going in different directions.
And he brings up another interesting point, connecting it to religion. Remember those prayer alcoves in cathedrals for rich people?
Oh, yeah, like they needed to be forgiven for being rich.
Gold says this idea that wealth is kind of sinful has been around forever. He even connects it to Max Weber's theory about the Protestant work ethic, which changed things a bit, saying that financial success could be a sign of God's favor, but only if you earned it through hard work and didn't waste it.
So even if we don't think money is evil, like on the surface, we might still have some of those old ideas stuck in our heads.
Exactly. And Gold says until we unpack those subconscious programs, we might be sabotaging ourselves without even knowing it.
So how do we even start to like unravel those deep beliefs? Seems like a huge task.
Gold says the first step is just being aware. You got to shine a light on those programs running in the background that are messing with our thoughts about money. And once we see them, then we can start to ask, like, are these even true?
So awareness is key, but then what? How do we actually change those negative beliefs?
That's where Gold's spooky stuff comes in. He talks about things like visualization, affirmations, even energy work to reprogram our subconscious minds. He says it's about aligning our thoughts, beliefs, and actions with what we want.
So now we're getting into the like really out there stuff about creating wealth.
Right, but even if you're not sure about those things, You got to admit, there's something to the power of positive thinking. Our beliefs shape our reality, and that includes our finances.
So even if we don't buy into all the spooky stuff, it's still good to change our mindset and focus on abundance instead of always thinking about what we lack.
Definitely. And Gold says when we combine that positive mindset with real action, that's when the magic happens. It's not just wishing for riches, it's about doing things to reach our goals.
That makes sense. So what kind of actions does he recommend?
He says to figure out your talents and skills, and find ways to use them to create something valuable. It's about finding that thing you're passionate about that also fills a need out there in the world.
So it's not about inventing something brand new. It could be making something better or finding a creative way to sell it.
Exactly. He says there are tons of ways to become wealthy, and the key is to find the one that feels right for you. You don't have to be the next Elon Musk to be a spooky millionaire.
I like that. It's really encouraging. It means anyone, no matter where they come from or what their situation is, can create abundance.
Absolutely. Gold's message is all about hope and possibility.
Mm.
He believes we all have the power to create the life we want, including financial success.
So to recap, we got to work on our mindset, get over what society tells us, take action, declutter our lives, push our comfort zones, and then take steps towards our goals. Did I get it all?
You got it. And remember, this is just a little taste of what Gold talks about in this book.
Mm.
There's way more to explore and apply to your own life.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about. So before we go, is there one last thing, something that'll make people think that you can leave our listeners with?
I think Gold would ask you this. What big action are you avoiding that could lead to your own spooky millionaire moment? The universe is always expanding. What are you holding back from expanding into?
Wow, that's a great question. Definitely something to think about. So to everyone listening, go out there and explore. You never know what spooky millionaire magic might be waiting for you. This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep chasing those dreams.